The Napier City Council audit and risk meeting will commence once we have a quorum, and we're back online shortly. Thank you. to the first Audit and Risk Committee meeting for 2022. At this stage, I'll pass over to our Chief Executive to lead us in the karakia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and tēnā koutou katoa. Me noi tātou, tūtawa mai e runga, tūtawa mai e raro, tūtawa mai e roto, tūtawa mai e waho. Kia tau ai te mauritu, te mauri ora, ki te katoa, haumie, puie, taekie. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We have one apology. John Pelleray is in Christchurch attending the funeral of a close friend. So kind of move in a seconder, please, that we accept that apology. Thank you, Kirsten. Thank you, Nigel. Announcements from the Mayor. Are there any announcements?
Only to just congratulate and say well done to all our team who have been planning and managing our rainfall over the last few days. The system has coped exceedingly well. We haven't had any major issues, and we are aware that there's still rain to come, so they'll be continuing to monitor and look after our system. So just a big thank you to everybody involved.
I'm unaware of any announcements from the chair. Announcements from management.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'd just like to announce the withdrawal of a public excluded item, financial delegations at this time. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So the first item to deal with is the confirmation of the minutes of the meeting held on the 26th of November 21, that they be taken as a true and accurate record of the meeting. Nigel, thank you, and I think I need to second that as the other attendee. So thank you for that. Moving on to our agenda items. So the first one is the health and safety report, and I think this is with you, Sue.
Good afternoon, thank you. I would like to be talking about something other than COVID, but really that's kind of top of mind and focus right now. So just in terms of an update for the report that was tabled for this meeting, as at today, we have 38 positive cases for staff and 33 people have actually recovered. So we have a bit of a crossover in terms of the numbers, obviously, that we have that we're reporting as positive and those that recover, and 22 household contacts. So I guess the good thing in that is that we're starting to see a drop off now in terms of the number of positive cases that we're seeing, which is great. Community services and city services generally are highly represented in the numbers that we have. So currently, there are 11 positive cases in community services and 13 in city services. 6 of those for city services are in the drainage and water space. So we know that Lance is working really hard to get his business continuity plan in play and making sure that that's working really well. We last week distributed rapid antigen kits to all of our staff who are in customer facing roles so that they could take those home. They were all given 5 kits each, and the idea was that they can test themselves if they're feeling unwell, have symptoms, or think that they may have been exposed. And we also have surveillance testing happening every Monday for a group of workers in critical roles at the depot and the aquarium. And we put that in place obviously as another line of defence for our staff to, keep them safe. In terms of our vaccination policies, so we'll all be aware of the changes that the government announced earlier this week around my vaccine passes and mandates. So we have reviewed our policy, and our intention is to let staff know on Monday that we'll be putting that policy in abeyance. So we're not removing it completely, but we are parking it for all staff and contractors and visitors and volunteers So that means that it will not be a requirement to be fully vaccinated to be employed by Napier City Council. And we have 17 staff that have chief executive exemptions. Those exemptions will be withdrawn, and they'll be able to continue with their job, carrying on doing their normal job, but following the public health guidelines that are in place around distancing, hygiene, mask wearing, etc. And we had 6 staff that we had redeployed into alternative work, and so we'll be communicating with them about their return to work as well. So I think from the perspective of how that's actually been managed within council, you know, we get a lot of positive comment from people about how we've been able to keep them all in work, and I'm sure that everybody now will be really pleased to hear what we're doing with regards to our policies and freeing some of that up for them, you know, freeing up being able to return to work. We will continue as part of our recruitment process to ask applicants whether they are fully vaccinated, and we'll record that. We legally can continue to do it. It's not going to be a requirement of employment, obviously, but it will be really helpful for us if we get into the position of having to reinstate that policy. It'll be a hopefully a little less administrative. In terms of the rest of the paper that's in front of you around health and safety, unless there are any questions, we can take that as read. We now have 2 lost time injuries for the full financial year. So those were a staff member fell through a grate at the aquatic centre and received some lacerations. They weren't hospitalised but did have some time off work. And we had another staff member who was the victim of some pretty serious verbal abuse from a member of the public, and became quite distressed by that, so they were given some time off to recover. So those are our 2 lost time injuries. Other incidents of more recently, we had a member of the public that was hit on the head by a rubbish bin that was being lowered by a contractor while they were playing chicken. The police attended the incident. They weren't kids, they were young adults, admitted what they were doing. That incident is under investigation, and we're waiting for the contractor to provide us their report into that incident. The other is a member of the public just this week went through a grate at a transfer station. They received some lacerations. They were treated at hospital but weren't admitted, and it's not a notifiable incident. The grate has been fixed and the incident is under investigation for report back. Other than that, we are about to roll out our annual flu vaccination. We've had 122 people so far book in for that, which is a really good number. And we're also about to roll out an app for people on their phone to use John Kirwan's mental health support app for staff. It's another piece of helping people with their resilience through, you know, the changes over the last few months and what everybody is having to adapt to in terms of COVID. So we're doing that in line along with the additional webinars and support that we've been providing to staff. So that is the health and safety report, unless there are any questions.
Thank you, Sue. Certainly plenty of challenges. Nigel.
Thank you, through the chair. Sue, just a couple of quick questions. On page 4, the top of page 5 of the report, it says 93% of actions that were required to be completed were completed. So can you just explain what happens with the other 7%?
They will have been completed now. It's just that they didn't get completed within the time frame that we set ourselves for those.
Okay, thank you. And then another question, health and safety on agendas. I think there were some 30 odd occasions. My question is more about what's the trigger for staff to bring health and safety onto their agendas?
Through their health and safety rep is probably the most common for that, or they will do that through their manager.
So it's not a trigger as in an incident or anything, it's just a case of if they have a concern.
Yeah, so we have 5 different health and safety committees that meet, and concerns or queries or incidents can be raised at that, and depending on what it is, it may make its way back to a formal team meeting agenda.
Thank you. And finally, the last question is 207 staff have been revalidated and recertified in their health and safety or first aid qualifications. Are any staff outstanding from being recertified?
I would have to come back to you on that, Councillor Simpson. Off the top of my head, I can't answer that question.
Okay.
I'll
Thank
find
you.
out.
Thank you.
Kirsten?
Thank you, David, and through the chair, just a couple of questions, Sue, regarding the site-wise pre-qualification contractor assessment scores. Can you just explain for me what the different colour bands actually mean? Is it a percentage-based type assessment?
Yes, it is, and what the colour bands in terms of the number of your selected contractors at each stage. So the green is where we want them to be, so they have completed everything that they need to in terms of their site-wise qualification. Anybody at red is obviously a concern, and in terms of all contractors, the number of contractors at each stage within site-wise, and it shows their average score across that at 78. What I will do is I will provide to you a more comprehensive and clearer explanation of what each of those colours mean and the numbers within each of those boxes.
Thank you. And so I guess just as a follow-on question, the difference between the 2 tables, I'm assuming, is your contractors is where we've almost done an audit ourselves, have we, and selected a sample of contractors to review, is that correct? And then the second table was essentially all of the contractors.
Within site-wise, yes, that's correct.
Yeah, yeah. And sorry, third question just occurred to me. With regards to those contractors that aren't currently meeting our desired standard, have we started putting a work program together in terms of getting them up to standard?
Yeah, so the team are really active. So anybody who is not meeting the standard, they work with them really closely to get them to where we need them to be.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any further questions? Right, thank you. That's good. And again, comprehensive report. Difficult times with COVID. Sue, I understand this is your last. Might be your last reports to the Audit and Risk Committee. So
yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Yep, we wish you well. Thank you for your contribution, and wish you well
Appreciate that. Thank you.
In your new role. Could I please have someone to move in a seconder for that we receive this report? Nigel, thank you. Kirsten, thank you. All those in favour? Thank you. Against? Right. So that moves us on to risk management, and a lot of activity has been occurring in this space. So we move to Adele. Are you Adele and Jane?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Chair. So thank you very much. So the purpose of this report is to update the committee in reviewing our emerging risks, but also to talk through how we're going against the review of the charter requirements and our policy and strategy, including the risk appetite. So we've undertaken quite a bit of work since our last audit and risk meeting. The executive leadership team back in September and November reviewed the risk management policy, and we're able to look at our strategic risks and our operational risks. At a workshop on the 1st of March, we worked with Council around those strategic risks with our external advisors just to ensure that we weren't having any gaps. And we're now at a stage where we can look to bring that through to the next committee once we've finalised that. The second stage was to take the strategic risk, but also to look at our risk appetite. Now that's obviously quite complex in terms of the various types of risk that council has, and then the level to which council and the community lens would view the appropriate level of risk that council should be undertaking and considering as an appetite moving forward. So that initial workshop has happened, and we'll be reviewing the output of that session, and we'll be coming back to the committee at the next quarter with a recommendation through to council as to the future of risk appetite as part of our policy setting. We've just noted in there our control and our risk management framework, and in relation to insurance, one of the recommendations from the risk appetite review was to assess our future needs of insurance moving forward. So as an output, the next stage of review will be around our insurance arrangements. Just noting that the whole insurance industry at the moment is changing and things are becoming more expensive, and also our revaluations that we've recently undertaken has had a significant impact on the overall cost of our assets themselves. And in today's market, you know, we can't, and the cost of steel, things are changing rapidly in that area, so we need to make sure that our insurance reflects the risk appetite of council. As Sue mentioned, we are heavily impacted at the moment by COVID. We've had up to about 10% of our staff impacted, and we focused in the last 3 months with every activity and undertake significant work in and around business continuity planning. There were early signals that we're potentially looking between 30 and at worst 50% of staff out. I think the current, although we might be nearly at the peak, we haven't seen those levels of impacts to our staff at this point in time, and we've been able to manage our services because of just the nature of COVID and through the Omicron variant wasn't as bad as what we'd initially anticipated. But the planning and assessment phase that we undertook certainly has allowed us to ensure that all services of council are working well. The central government sort of focused in and around efforts around our critical services, which includes, for example, water and roading and waste services. And so we've certainly had a focus in those key areas as well. We've talked to the work that we've undertaken in relation to our staff, and we will continue to work with the government guidelines. And so just flowing through the rest of the report, I'm just noting our emerging risks, you know, obviously just with the worldwide activities, and then we're looking at decision pathways of what's happening over the next 6 months in advance of council elections. But I'll take the rest of the report as read, and if the committee have any questions, happy to answer those. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, David. Sorry.
Thank you, Adele. So any questions of Adele under report? Nigel.
Yeah, more a comment through you, Chair. I just wanted to say thank you for the work. It's a great piece of work. It sets out some really clear strategy and approach, and it'll be very easy for us in governance to follow through how this is implemented over time. So probably from that, the only question I have, and it's very minor, is just looking at the causes and the controls. We're satisfied that through, and I know there's been a couple of workshops, we're satisfied that there's good processes in place to identify and manage the causes and implement change for control.
Are you talking specifically with the ones that have been listed in the report, or are you talking sort of in a wider context?
A wider context, more holistically, yep.
Yes, so where we have significant concern and or we cannot manage those mitigations and we're still at extreme risk, then we continue to provide that level of information to the committee and through to council as well. there's obviously, in most cases, we are able to put controls enough in place to ensure that we're not at risk.
Thanks, Adele. Thanks, Nigel. I had a just a question broadly in terms of I guess commentary in the last few days about cyber risk. Dare I mention the word, and the talk around what might be happening on a global basis. Just raising that as an awareness, and if there's any comment.
Through the chair, we do get advised of the level of activity in cyber through our IT team. They're well connected with what's happening globally at the moment, and certainly take on board your comments that it is a more significant risk. But we have now, as we've mentioned at our last committee meeting, employed a full-time cybersecurity engineer, and we do have improved resilience, but also getting more information in this space as well moving forward.
Thanks, Annette.
We can't control what we can't control, unfortunately,
exactly
but
right.
we're certainly improving our resilience and our ability to keep a more watchful eye and ensure that our systems and processes are up with the latest technology that we need to be able to mitigate that risk.
Certainly a moving target. Very good. No other comments or questions on the risk management report. We've got the officer's recommendations there. So can we move in a seconder, please? That we, Graham and Nigel, thank you. All those in favour? Thank you very much. Moving on to the business continuity planning, and quite clearly a significant amount of work has gone on here, and I think we need to acknowledge comments that were made in the workshop about the quality of the paper that was presented to us. It certainly was comprehensive, and it has been included in these papers. But Adele, are you speaking to this?
Yeah, through the chair, I'll continue to speak to this.
Thank you.
I think the report we will table as read. Because there's so much happening in this space at the moment, we did want the opportunity to work with the committee through a workshop. This is to formally acknowledge the report and the work that's been happening in the background to ensure that Napier City is resilient in terms of our business continuity planning for Omicron. Particularly as probably now we are at our peak, it's probably a good time to provide that information to the committee in a formal sense.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Graham.
Probably just a question to relate to the Chief Executive. Her latest updates from the DHB as regard to what our current status is with Omicron. How far through?
Thank you, and through the chair, Councillor Taylor, we had another update this morning where the question was specifically asked, is Hawke's Bay through the peak? And the advice at the moment is that not yet. So we are still predicting our case numbers to rise a little bit further, and that will probably last for 2 to 3 weeks is the advice that we have been given. The members of this committee may also be aware that the DHB is now starting to move staff around to ensure that services can continue, given that they are experiencing high numbers of vacancies from COVID infected people as well. And for Napier, what that looks like at the moment is that after hours service from 9 PM onwards will not be available at this time, as there was a nurse led service that have been redirected to the hospital. So at this stage, the predictions are that we will still be looking for a peak, and that will last for another fortnight, up to a month, depending on, I suppose, which models you're looking at. What that means practically from our perspective is we are still managing our business continuity plans. However, as Sue mentioned, our numbers seem to be dropping off in terms of impacted people at Napier City Council. We'll touch wood, and we'll continue to hope that that trend continues. We'll still take all of our health measures and precautionary approaches and risk mitigation, such as mask wearing and physical distancing. We will still be continuing all of that for some time to come. But I am hopeful that there will be a return to work for those who have been working from home if government moves the traffic light to orange. So thank you. This is a pretty long way of saying no one really knows.
Thanks, Steph. Thanks, Graham. Kirsten.
Thank you, through the chair. And I just wanted to take the opportunity to acknowledge the work that's been put into the plan and how important these plans are, particularly when we have sort of co-events going on like we do at the moment with the rainfall event as well, and when you've already got the absences due to COVID. So having these BCPs are absolutely critical to ensure that we can carry on providing those essential services to our community. So well done to everybody that's been involved in pulling it together.
Thanks, Kirsten. So no further questions or comments. I need a mover and a seconder, please, for the two recommendations there. Graham and Kirsten, thank you very much. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Move on to the sensitive expenditure report. I think this is reasonably straightforward. Is Carolyn online, or are you handing this, Adele?
Yeah. Through the chair, yes, Caroline is having difficulties with IT this afternoon, so I'm happy to have the report as read and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. It's reasonably straightforward, so a mover and a seconder, please. Nigel, thank you. Graham, thank you. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. And then we move on to the internal audit of the Building and Resource Consents Review undertaken by Crow. I think the information contained in the report is excellent, but Adele, is this again in your hands, or is Tadia online?
Hello, I'm online.
Thanks, Talia.
Thank you, Tadia.
So through the chair, yes, so as you'll be aware, we have an internal audit program with Crow, our internal auditors. The most recent internal audit that they have undertaken is this Building and Resource Consents Review, where they were looking at all of our internal processes in those two areas. So they had a couple of team members come on site for 2 days and then go away and analyse the information that they found out. They did some walkthroughs of several transactions to ensure that we had all of the paperwork behind that. And the findings in general were fairly good. We've got some great recommendations out of them. There were 2 high priority recommendations, which require some updated processes from our point of view, 5 medium risks and 1 process improvement that was identified, as the report shows. Thank you.
Thanks, Tadia. I thought the report was excellent, and great to see get to see the feedback and the dates for completion of the matters raised. I think that's very healthy, and certainly, when you look at an internal audit process, you're looking for checks and balances, but also value add. And I think, reading this report, that certainly comes through. So good process. Any other comments or questions? There being none, I'll ask someone to move the receipt of that report, please. Nigel, thank you. Seconder, Graham, thank you. All those in favour? Against, thank you, carried. We move on to the probably the bit. Oh, Kirsten. Have you got a question, Kirsten? No. We'll move on to the annual plan, and again, so if Karen's not around, Carol, Adele, are you across this one as well?
Yeah. Yes, through the chair. I mean, this has been presented both to council now, and we've had an early report to you. And this is just to provide a further opportunity before it goes to council next week. We've prepared now the consultation document, and these are all about underlying assumptions and information that feed into the material that would be part of the consultation pack with the community. And so it's the opportunity for the committee to provide any further comment before we finalise this with council next week, and to offer any other information or request for information as part of this audit process with you.
Great, thank you. So we've had an opportunity to pass comments. I think it's reasonably straightforward. But we move in a seconder, please. Graham and Nigel, thank you very much. All those in favour? Carried. Thank you. Before we move into the public excluded component of our meeting, are there any minor matters not on the agenda? That being the case, can I please have a mover and a seconder that we move into the public excluded part of this meeting? Graham and Nigel, thank you. All those in favour? Carried, thank you.